Adrian Ruafi.
Tēnā koe te kaiwaka wā o te whare nei. O te rā te whare tēnā tātou. Tēnā tātou I rungi tēnei kaupapa nunui kei wainganui a tātou iwi katoa puta no ngā mautere nei. O te noa e tika nei kia tukumihi atu kia rātou mā ki te koia kata e anō ka mate, nō reira e te whaia haere atura. Mr. Speaker, last year during the campaign, the election campaign, whenever I spoke on Whānau order, I always prefaced my comments by making certain that the people that I was speaking to knew exactly which Whānau order I was talking about. I always talked about Whānau order, the kaupapa, the concept, the philosophical base upon which those of us who believe in this kaupapa operate within. I also spoke about Whānau order, the model of practice. That is the way that providers provide their whānau-centred services to the families that they engage with. And then I talked about the government program, the government policy, Whānau order, and that's what I want to talk about. Because last year I actually got myself, I don't think I was in trouble, but I managed to make some statements about the government policy Whānau order, which attracted comment from the then Minister Tariana Turia, who said that I was wrong. Today we have a report that actually says that I was right. I was right to comment on Whānau order, the government policy, because the criticisms that we made last year have now been reported in the Auditor-General's report. And I think that every party in this House, and the government in particular, the Minister, needs to take responsibility for the issues that have been raised. Not to be talking in this House about the kaupapa or the model of practice, but actually addressing the issue of the government policy, which is wrong. That's what the government needs to be talking about. It's easy for us to be talking about what's wrong with our families and bring that to the House as if that's the issue. I can tell the House that is not the issue. The issue is the way that the government is implementing this policy of Whānau order. And it's, in a way, it's a great sadness to me that the government chose to use the name Whānau order for its policy and its program. They should have left that as a kaupapa, as a concept, and left it as a model of practice for those providers that deliver the services to the people. They should own Whānau order, not the government. I don't need the government to, and my whānau and everyone's families actually don't really need the government to tell us what Whānau order is. What we need is what the Auditor-General has said in her report. Last year we campaigned in Labour on a policy of reviewing the government's policy of Whānau order. And that's exactly what the Auditor-General has now told the whole world, that there needs to be a thorough investigation of this government policy. And that is one of the key points that I want to make to this House, because actually what we've heard so far is a lot of justification. We've heard about everything that's wrong with our families and how good the providers are doing. And I agree with that. I agree that our providers out there are doing an excellent job of delivering services under a policy which is quite confused. I can say that, sir, because 4 years ago I was the chair of a iwi health provider in Whanganui who went through this process, and I'm not surprised at the level of administration and the cost of administration to implement this policy. the number of hoops that we had to go through, hurdles we had to go over, change of venues, change of game, change of the rules while this policy was being implemented or started to be implemented, meant that it couldn't possibly have been anything else but highly costly administratively. And I don't completely blame Te Puni Kōkiri by themselves. I think that, and I'm speaking from my personal experience, that the Ministry of Health and the Ministry of Social Development were actually, how would I put it? They weren't willing participants in this process. I got the sense when we met with those ministries that Te Puni Kōkiri was having to push them forward to make sure that they participated. And I've spoken to a number of people that have gone through the same experience. So the cost of administration was unnecessary. I think sometimes Te Puni Kōkiri can be overly risk averse, and that sometimes they put too many too many processes in place when maybe one process might be sufficient and they'll have 2 or 3 in place. And this is what has happened with Whānau Order, the government policy. Sir, the Auditor-General points out a number of issues. For example, it has a lot of potential. And I think that, that is one of the highlights of this report, in a report that doesn't have very many highlights. I think the potential of this, both the kaupapa, the model of practice, and indeed the government policy has potential if it's done the right way. And to me, quite clearly, this has not been done very well. The implementation of it has not been good. Sir, last week I spoke in the Appropriations Bill and I raised the issue around Māori housing, where in June last year the then Minister announced that the Māori Housing Fund would go to Pou Matakana, a grassroots organisation, so that it could operate that funding for Māori housing. After the election in December last year, that decision was overturned, and now it is going back to Te Puni Kōkiri. I wonder, sir, if it's not time to readdress that particular issue in light of the criticisms in the Auditor-General's report on Te Puni Kōkiri. Maybe that decision should be revisited and give Pou Matakana a shot at having that funding for Māori housing. And while I'm on it, what progress has actually been made in those areas? We've heard nothing about those policy areas since they were announced. So I think it's really important for us to highlight the fact that we did have a policy on Whānau Order, and that on our side of the House and within the Auditor-General's report, it said that Whānau Order actually started in 2002, both with a policy within the Ministry of Health, Whānau Order policy, but one of the key things that stood side by side with that policy was the Labour Party's funding for outcomes. This was now the basis for the integrated contracts that each and every one of the Whānau Order providers has had to go through. This is a really important point for me to make, because I think that that is one of the 3 cornerstones of the current government's Whānau Order policy. And that actually started with the Labour Party, because we, on this side of the House, we were talking about having integrated contracts with organisations who provided an integrated service. So, Mr Speaker, thank you very much.
I call Mayor